When we think of the Olympic Games, we imagine glory, honor, and gold medals. But what if I told you that, in ancient Greece, being an Olympic athlete meant pain, humiliation, and, in some cases, death? Because, unlike today, where a losing athlete can simply say they'll try again in the next Olympics, a Greek competitor could leave the arena in one of two ways: victorious, or in urgent need of a burial. The ancient Olympic Games were a bizarre mix of UFC, NASCAR, and an episode of Game of Thrones. Brutal sports, competitors with no protection whatsoever, and a social expectation that you had to fight to the end. Literally. Instead of a gold medal, the real prize was making it out alive. And if that sounds exaggerated, just wait until you see what they called light training. If you've ever felt bad about skipping a gym session, get ready to feel even worse. Now, take a deep breath, adjust your imaginary tunic, and join me on this journey into the fitness hell that was the life of an ancient Olympic athlete. Hey Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you love historical curiosities, epic battles, crazy mysteries, and mind-blowing stories that most people don't know about, then hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you won't miss any of our new videos and can keep uncovering insane facts every week. And of course, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you even more awesome content. Alright, let's jump back into history. Being an Olympic athlete in ancient Greece wasn't just about sports, it was a matter of national pride. Cities invested heavily in their competitors, treating them like prized racehorses. They were given special diets, intense training, and were paraded around as heroes. But with great privilege came great pressure. Winning meant eternal glory. Losing, well, that was another story entirely. For Greek city-states, Olympic victory wasn't just about bragging rights, it was an investment. They funded training facilities, paid for specialized coaching, and provided luxurious benefits to their athletes. But if that athlete failed to bring home the victory, the city didn't take it lightly. Some disgraced athletes were exiled, stripped of their citizenship, or just publicly shamed into hiding. No pressure, right? And then there were the winners. Victorious athletes were treated like gods, showered with gifts, granted free meals for life, and even had statues built in their honor. But for every champion basking in glory, there was a defeated competitor slinking away, hoping their name would be forgotten. If you think sports fans today are brutal, imagine an entire city expecting you to win and then turning on you the moment you fail. It was like being a modern football star, but instead of mean tweets, you might get banished from your hometown. Some athletes were so terrified of losing that they would rather cheat than face the shame. But we'll get to the dirty tricks of the games soon enough. Before that, let's talk about the training, because even getting to the competition was a brutal test of endurance. Forget modern gyms with air conditioning, protein shakes, and fancy recovery techniques. In ancient Greece, training was pure, unfiltered suffering. There was no such thing as overtraining. If you could still move, you could still train. And if you collapsed, well, maybe you weren't cut out for glory after all. Olympic hopefuls trained under the blazing Mediterranean sun, running barefoot on rocky terrain, wrestling for hours without water, and lifting heavy objects like stones, logs, or even live animals. Yes, you heard that right. One famous athlete, Milo of Croton, supposedly trained by carrying a calf on his back every day until it became a full-grown bull. Basically, ancient Greece invented CrossFit, just without overpriced shoes and protein bars. The goal of training wasn't just to get strong, it was to make sure you were tougher than your opponent. Pain tolerance was a key skill, because once you were in the arena, nobody was going to stop the fight just because you twisted an ankle. And don't even think about skipping a workout. Ancient Greek trainers were ruthless. If an athlete showed signs of weakness, he could be expelled before even reaching the competition. Imagine spending years preparing, only to be told at the last moment that you weren't worthy. The grueling regimen included sprinting in full armor, wrestling with no rules, and even diet restrictions. Because if you thought ancient Greek athletes could enjoy a casual cheat day, think again. Their meals were designed to maximize muscle and endurance, with a heavy focus on meat, bread, and olives. Basically, they ate like Spartan warriors, because, well, some of them were. If you think modern athletes have it tough, just imagine training every day with no rest, no recovery shakes, and no excuses. But if you think training was hard, wait until you hear about the cheating and corruption that ran rampant in the games. If you thought modern sports scandals were bad, let's take a trip back to ancient Greece, where athletes would do just about anything to win. And I mean anything. Forget fair play. This was a time when bribing a judge was just another strategic move. Many athletes didn't just train for victory, they paid for it. Rich competitors often slipped a few coins to the judges to secure favorable rulings. It wasn't uncommon for entire competitions to be rigged, making modern-day betting scandals look like amateur hour. And what about performance enhancers? Greek athletes were already on it. They consumed special herbal concoctions, downed wine so strong it could knock out a horse, and even ate animal testicles, believing they were a source of raw strength. If ancient Greece had an anti-doping agency, half the competitors would have been banned faster than a disgraced Tour de France cyclist. Of course, not everyone got away with it. Those caught cheating had their names and crimes engraved on stone tablets at Olympia, a permanent record of their dishonor. Imagine if every modern athlete who failed a drug test had their face carved into a wall for all eternity. Harsh. Maybe. Effective. Absolutely. But bribery and doping were nothing compared to the real dangers of the games. Some sports were so brutal that competitors didn't just risk losing, they risked their lives. Buckle up, because things are about to get deadly. Some Olympic events weren't just about winning, they were about survival. In ancient Greece, stepping into the arena meant accepting the very real possibility that you might not step back out. There were no weight classes, no referees calling timeouts, and no safety equipment. Just you, your opponent, and the gods deciding your fate. One of the deadliest competitions was Pancration, a no-holds-barred fight that made modern MMA look like a friendly sparring match. There were only two rules: no eye gouging and no biting. Everything else? Fair game. Fighters could break bones, dislocate joints, and even choke opponents until they stopped moving, permanently. In fact, some matches ended with one fighter dead but still declared the winner because their opponent tapped out first. Talk about taking win or die trying, literally. Then there were the chariot races, which made NASCAR crashes look tame. Imagine a high-speed death trap where riders had little control over their wild, adrenaline-pumped horses. Chariots flipped, drivers were trampled, and if you fell off, good luck avoiding the stampede. These races were so dangerous that simply crossing the finish line in one piece was considered a victory in itself. Even running wasn't safe. One event required athletes to sprint in full armor, because nothing screams speed like wearing 30 kilos of metal. And if you tripped, well, your competitors weren't stopping to help. The ancient Olympics weren't just about honor and glory. They were about survival of the fittest in the most brutal way possible. But even if you made it out alive, that didn't mean your troubles were over. Because life after victory wasn't always as glamorous as it seemed. Winning an Olympic event in ancient Greece was the ultimate achievement. Victors were treated like gods, showered with gifts, granted free meals for life, and even had statues built in their honor. Imagine winning a gold medal today and never having to pay for food again. Sounds amazing, right? Well, not so fast. For some champions, the glory was fleeting. Cities loved their heroes, until they didn't. If a new, younger athlete came along, or if the political climate changed, a once revered champion could find himself forgotten, broke, and struggling to make ends meet. Some victors spent all their winnings too quickly, assuming the good times would never end. Spoiler alert, they did. And then there were the cities that turned on their own heroes. If an athlete accepted bribes, got caught cheating, or simply lost their charm, they could be erased from history faster than a fallen celebrity today. Statues were torn down, names were scratched off records, and all that remained was the echo of their former glory. Some retired athletes found a second life as trainers, helping the next generation chase the same fleeting fame. Others, less fortunate, ended up living in poverty, with nothing but their old victory wreath to remind them of their past greatness. So, while winning the Olympics might have been the highest honor, staying on top was another story entirely. And now that we've seen the pain, the pressure, and the brutal reality of an Olympian's life, the real question is, would you have what it takes? After everything we've seen, The brutal training, the life-or-death competitions, the rampant cheating, and the pressure to win at all costs. One thing is clear. The ancient Olympics were less about sportsmanship and more about survival. Imagine yourself in the sandals of a Greek athlete. You've spent years training under the blistering sun, lifting stones, wrestling grown men with no rules, and sprinting in full armor. You finally make it to the games, only to face an opponent who's willing to break your ribs just to claim victory. If you win, you're showered with glory. For a while. If you lose, you risk exile, shame, or worse. And if you die, well, at least you made it to the history books. Compared to today's athletes, who get sponsorship deals, medical support, and actual safety regulations, ancient Olympians lived in a completely different world. No cameras, no instant replays, just raw, unfiltered combat where the only guarantee was pain. So, after hearing the real story, would you still want to compete in the ancient Olympics? Could you handle the pressure, the suffering, and the very real possibility that your first games might also be your last? Or would you rather sit this one out and enjoy the modern version from the comfort of your couch? Either way, one thing's for sure. The next time you watch the Olympics, you'll appreciate just how easy today's athletes have it.